And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Nadia Faulman, who writes, "Hello, John. I know it's not your normal cup of tea, but I just read that HBO is bringing back Sex and the City for another season. However, only 3 of the 4 main stars will return since it's public knowledge that Kim Cattrall and Sarah Jessica Parker hated each other. What do you think about HBO bringing back the series, and is it unwise to try to do it without the 4th member of the cast?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in. And yeah, listen, before there was Game of Thrones, before there was Breaking Bad, one of the big, iconic, powerhouse juggernaut shows out there that maybe some of you guys never watched, but make no mistake, a lot of people did, was Sex and the City. Rob, I remember girl I was dating at the time was obsessed with Sex and the City. I know a lot of women were obsessed with Sex and the City. Dude, I remember when the movie came out, when the Sex and the City movie came out, I wanted to review it anyway. And I had just started dating this one girl, and we went, and when she showed up to my place for me to drive us down, she was like all decked out, like completely decked out. Her best shoes, her best outfit, her best bag, everything. And I thought, well, this is a little extreme. But then I got to the theater, Rob. There was only 2 other individuals in this 400-seat theater, completely packed. There was only 2 other individuals who had testicles. That was it. It was me and 2 other individuals that had testicles, and that was it. And all the women there, if you understand how passionate people were about this show, were completely decked out, best shoes. Like, we think us nerd guys, oh yeah, a new Star Wars movie, we'll put on our Jedi robes. And no. They did it first. They would cosplay up as their favorite Sex and the City girls and go. And it was an absolute juggernaut. Rob, I still remember girls had this thing about, what are you? Oh, I'm a Miranda. I'm a Carrie. Like, every girl had their own designation, right? You don't see guys going, I'm an Obi-Wan. Oh, I'm a Tarkin. I'm a Jar Jar. Now, that's how successful, like, you may not have watched the show, but just because you and your friends didn't watch it, don't underestimate how huge of a pop cultural juggernaut this show was. It, of course, had its run, then did 2 movies. The first movie was actually pretty good, and I never watched the show. I thought the second movie struggled, and I think most people acknowledge that. But there's been word for a couple of years about them wanting to do a 3rd movie. That came and went because Kim Cattrall said she would absolutely refuse to do it. And now comes word that they are doing a revival at HBO Max. HBO Max is going to run a 10-episode season of it, and it's only going to be those 3 women you see in the picture. Kim Cattrall is not coming back. She's not going to do it. This comes to us from the folks over at Variety, who write, "The new chapter is titled And Just Like That, and will star Sarah Jessica Parker, Cynthia Nixon, and Kristen Davis. Kim Cattrall, who played Samantha Jones in the original series, is not returning. Parker, Nixon, and Davis will also executive produce along with Michael Patrick King. The revival will follow Carrie, Charlotte, and Miranda as they navigate love and friendship in their 50s. The series will consist of 10 half-hour episodes and is set to begin production in New York City in mid-spring." This, again, I understand, is not going to be considered the biggest news in the world for a lot of regular viewers of the John Campea Show. But make no mistake about how big of news this is in the entertainment world. This is a pretty big deal. Now, normally, Rob, I don't like getting into the TMZ nonsense, but this is directly affecting this show. Kim Cattrall and Sarah Jessica Parker, there was rumors for years that they never got along, or that Kim Cattrall never got along with any of the other members of the show. And that went back and forth. And a lot of times Kim Cattrall and Sarah Jessica Parker would deny that. And then it was just a couple of years ago, Kim Cattrall's brother sadly passed away. And this big thing happened where Sarah Jessica Parker got on Kim Cattrall's social media where she posted about her brother dying and sent a kind of like, hey, we're so sorry to hear about the loss of your brother and, you know, all that kind of stuff. To which Kim Cattrall responded publicly, F you, like, you're just, don't try to capitalize on my family's tragedy to make yourself look like a media darling or whatever, make yourself look something. It's like, whoa, okay, so if there was ever any doubt about what's going on there. So the question becomes, is it a mistake for them to do this show now and attempt to do this show without the fourth member, because, you know, regardless of whether you think Sarah Jessica Parker was the more important person in that collection or not, it's like trying to continue to do the Beatles without one of them there. I don't know. So it is kind of weird, but you know what? I think if they tried for years to get Kim Cattrall to get back on and do it, and she just doesn't want to do it, I don't think you let the boat sink. There's still going to be a ravenous audience there. HBO clearly needs the help, and we'll talk about that in our next segment. So I think this is actually pretty interesting, and I think this is going to be a bigger hit with a lot of people than many of us think. Anyway, Rob, you hear about all this. What are your thoughts on this whole return of Sex in the City?
Well, I got to tell you a story. When I saw the first Sex and the City movie, I was in Bulgaria working on this film called The Hills Run Red, and we went to a movie theater. Bulgaria had surprisingly great movie theaters, and we went with some of the crew, a lot of female crew members. And after the movie was over, the female crew members were appalled. And they're like, are American women really like this? Because they hadn't seen the show yet, and they didn't understand the materialism, the obsession with Manolo Blahnik's shoes and all this. And we were put in this weird position, like, well, some American women are like this, but it's an exaggeration, sort of. But it was really interesting to see sort of a cross-cultural examination of the Sex and the City franchise that I wasn't expecting when the movie was over. I'm like, yeah, we'll go see. It never occurred to me that people just didn't get Sex and the City or hadn't seen it yet. I figured everyone knew. But it was interesting to hear women from a different culture respond to the film and the crass consumerism and shallowness on display. But look, I liked Sex and the City. It was, after all, it was a sitcom. You know, it was a comedy about women making their way in New York, and it's 25 years old. So what I really find interesting is that to examine fictional characters, again, to me, it's like watching Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. You know, you're watching these characters that you saw in their 30s, and now they're in their mid-50s, and they're traversing, how has the world changed? How has their lives changed? I mean, you would assume they're settled down now. They're still not women stalking for prey in New York City in the form of men in business suits with fat wallets. You know, it's a whole different vibe. And I think it'll be really curious to see how they address these issues. I would assume that the humor is going to be different and more mature. And I'm excited, actually, because, look, I always watched Sex and the City for what it was. And I did feel that there was some insight into the female psyche in that show. And I didn't know the designer labels for men that made shoes for women. I didn't know that. And you could bust that out. And I'm like, nice Manolos, man. And somebody would say, well, those aren't Manolos, but I appreciate you noticing my shoes. I'm like, yeah, I would never have said that had I not watched Sex and the City. But look, again, great characters, great writing, could be good. And the absence of Samantha, who was my favorite character, is a bummer. But even then, if they incorporate the idea that sometimes people's friends leave, maybe she passed away in the continuity, maybe she moved away, you never know, because she did move away in the show to California for a while to live with Smith.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, man. You know, I'll watch it.
I wonder if they'll be really bitter and say she died by getting ripped apart by alligators on a golf course or something. I don't think they'll do that, but
they're going to leave the door open for her to come back because reasons. I mean, so much. I would watch. It would get huge ratings if Samantha came back.
Well, we'll see. I think it's going to get huge ratings regardless. I really do. I think it will. So question is, guys, what do you think about this news? Hey, listen, like they said in the email, I know Sex and the City is not the cup of tea for a lot of people who watch this show, but you can't deny the huge pop cultural influence it had. What are your guys' thoughts? Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys.